There is much to learn.
Okay, well, hello everybody and welcome. Thank you for coming by. My name's Zeke and I've been a voice acting teacher here since last July, I think. But for those of you that don't know, I actually started off as a student on this server, and one of the main roadblocks that I had with moving forward was combat shouts, because they are very hard to get right. So hopefully this is going to help some people who are starting out get a little bit better at them, and yeah, just get you on your path to being good at it. So I'm going to just start off with why being able to shout is important in the first place. Alright, so let's just imagine you're recording a script. Okay, your character works as a builder who's just come home from a long day of work. You reach for the door handle and you realize that it's already unlocked. You enter the house, a little bit on edge, before you notice a strange shadow stretching from the kitchen doorway. There is where you notice an unknown figure, standing in the dimly lit room, knife in hand. You reach for the hammer in your tool belt as a wave of uncontrollable rage overcomes you and you lunge in for a lethal attack. As you go, you let out this big war cry as you land the hammer. Ah, hiya! See why it's important to be able to do combat shouts? You know, if you have this tense situation, you know, it's going to a climax, right? But if you can't shout and you can't convincingly show the emotions and your anger and like you're in a battle, then it's going to make the entire script and everything leading up to it fall flat. So yeah, that's why being able to shout is important, because in a lot of situations you're going to need to be loud and you're going to need to show big emotions. And if you can't do that convincingly, then yeah, it's going to really hold you back as a voice actor. But getting to that point of being able to shout is pretty tricky, and there's very much a social barrier before you can get to that point where you're comfortable to shout. And this is something that I struggled with a lot, the social barrier, because, you know, we're often taught just socially that, you know, you have an inside voice when you're inside and you don't talk loud. And, you know, if you're out in a field playing sport or something, fair enough, you shout. But when you're inside just at your desk and, you know, other people don't know what's going on and stuff, it can be very, very hard to make yourself be loud. And I fully understand that, and that was what held me back for a long time. There are a few solutions to this, or things that help. One is just in general practicing. It's just getting comfortable with being loud over a long period of time, which is really the more surefire way to do it. But what I did originally to get better at it is to kind of isolate yourself from the world around you, so you feel like you're in a sort of different section to everyone else. So I would literally get my blanket and just put it over my head. And yeah, it would just disconnect me from the outside world a little bit, so I'm just focusing on the script. And it helped with the reverb a bit too, which is always nice. But yeah, basically do whatever you can to try and get yourself in a situation that you're comfortable to be loud. Whether that be, yeah, isolating yourself from the outside world like I did, just through practice, even if just going through routines of starting out quiet and then, you know, saying like, hey, over and over again, but every time make it a bit louder. Anything like that can get you used to being loud and doing things like that. Second of all, there's a difference between talking loudly versus yelling versus shouting and screaming, right? I mean, I'd say right now is probably me talking loudly, maybe a little bit under that talking loudly point. But there is a big difference, right? So this is just me talking pretty loudly. This is me kind of yelling out, being loud. And this is me shouting! And there's a big difference between all of it. You need to sort of, you know which one to use in each situation. Like, for instance, combat barks and stuff like that. You want to go into that shouting and screaming kind of zone, where it's that desperation and that struggle and wanting to survive and life or death situation is really shown with your performance, right? So, yeah, that's pretty much that. There are other situations where talking loudly and yelling will also be important and good to do, you know. Yelling would be kind of like talking across the house to someone in the kitchen to, ask if they can make you a coffee or something like that. Um, but yeah, just knowing what context to use, different types of yelling and shouting is also pretty important. But yeah, there is a difference. So oftentimes in the voice acting channel, for the combat barks, there's assignment that I'm sure the voice acting students here will know, the cottage cheese and onions student assignment. That was the one that I struggled with for a long time. You need to go into that shouting and screaming zone for that to be able to pass it properly. So next point here is projecting your voice, which is a pretty important thing, because if you're talking kind of meekly or trying to do like a fake sort of shout, like a yeah kind of thing, it's not going to be convincing. You need to properly breathe from your diaphragm, project your voice out, make sure that you are speaking confidently and, pushing that voice out there. Because, well, I'm pretty sure that everyone here, if you're in a combat situation, you're going to be pretty confident in the fact that you don't want to die. So, speaking, projecting your voice, not going, don't do that, stop it, it hurts. That's not gonna help anyone. Okay, next is how to do it safely, because screaming and yelling can be very intensive on your throat. Oh, sorry, microphone. On your throat and, on a lot of your just things in here. And you want to make sure that your vocal health is good, because your voice is an instrument that you cannot replace, not easily at least. So if there's ever any point, especially when shouting, but when doing voice acting in general, if your throat or anything in here ever starts to hurt or be uncomfortable, take a break for like at least 24 hours, okay? Make sure that you're drinking plenty of water. If you need to soothe your throat, go make some tea with honey in it or something. Like, really make sure that you're taking care of your throat, because if you lose your voice, or if you, do permanent damage to it, it's just, it's one of those things where at the time, it's very easy to do, just to go too far, but you're going to have long-term consequences for it. And yeah, it is going to affect your ability to use your voice with the same amount of range. Now, leading on from that point, okay, doing different voices and different accents, especially like for the Elder Scrolls, where we have all these different races that have different, accents and voices and ways to do the voices, your ability to shout and yell will change depending on the voice you're doing, right? For me, when I'm just talking normally, being able to shout is pretty, it's fairly easy for me to do because I practice it a lot. But for instance, when I'm recording a Skywind script and I'm using my Dark Elf voice, shouting is it's a lot different when you're trying to do the Dark Elf voice, right? Your false chords that you're trying to activate, they kind of just get pushed to the side when you have that much air going through, and it's not the same. So oftentimes, it is actually necessary to change the method of how you do the voice, and sometimes even put less focus on the voice itself and more focus onto the shout, because a lot of the time it's more important that the shout is convincing than the accent and voice staying consistent. So with Dark Elf, right, if I'm talking like this a lot of the time and I go to shout, I'm going to lose the rasp. And so I'll have to go into a more of a vocal fry or constricting the throat to get that rasp, which is not really the best or safest way to do it, but it's the only real way to do it that makes it sound somewhat similar to the voice you're meant to be doing. You just got to make sure that you're trying your best to do it safely, and you keep everything loose. Make sure you relax your muscles and you're relaxed when you shout. If you're strict and everything's tight, that you're a lot more likely to do damage. So, as funny as it is where your character's very angry and fighting to the death, you have to be completely relaxed, but still somehow stay in character. And it can be a challenge sometimes. It really can be. So, leading on from this is how to make it believable, which, you basically got to put yourself in the shoes of your character and picture yourself in this life or death situation. You're fighting someone with a sword or a warhammer or something, or whatever it is. You've just been hit with an arrow in the shoulder, right? Put yourself in the shoes of your character and really just feel that anger and desperation and just let it out. Like, especially with combat, but with just shouting in general, you need to let loose, because someone who is shouting doesn't care what other people think of them. Like, they don't care socially what people are going to think of them for shouting, because they're in a very passionate, emotional state at that point, right? So in the middle of a fight, don't be shy. You're not going to be shy and meekly saying, ow, ouchie, ooh, whenever you get hit. There's going to be screaming, there's going to be shouting, and if you've seen any, fight videos of, I don't know, teenagers going at it, it's very loud. Everyone's just shouting. It's a lot. So, get into it, get into the role. But once again, you also need to relax your muscles. It's hard. It's like you have to mentally put yourself in that space, and being physical and having physicality does help. You just got to really try and make sure that you don't tense up your throat muscles. Because if you do that over a long period of time, it's very likely that you will do damage, and you don't want that, as I've said before. So yeah, as I've sort of hinted at, there are pros and cons to actually being angry and getting yourself into that emotional and physical space. Because I think your performance is going to be more believable, and it's going to be a lot easier to get into it if you are, standing up, you're really tensing up your muscles, you're getting into it, like, copy the body language and the way your body reacts when you are angry. The only issue with that, like I said, is with tensing up your muscles. I've repeated myself a lot, but it is an important point. You need to make sure that you just don't do damage, and damage control, it's very important. Now, I'm going to move on to the more technical side for doing combat shouts now, because it's not quite the same as recording normal dialogue. So, first of all, microphone gain. You're going to want to turn that down. You need to turn it down. If you're, I know with Skywind, I think if your voice goes above -6 or -3, like, that's kind of like the threshold of how high you want it to go, because otherwise it's getting really close to clipping and distorting, and it's not going to sound good. Really, anything as long as it's below 0 decibels is fine and doesn't distort, but you just don't want to take that risk. You want a bit of headroom there in case you do go over. So if you use an XLR microphone like I do and you have an audio interface, turn the gain down until, it is a good volume and you're peaking at around that -6, maybe even less than that. If you have a USB microphone or another microphone that doesn't have a gain knob, this makes it a little bit more tricky. You might need to distance yourself from the microphone a lot more and just make sure that your acoustic treatment is good so it stops reverb. It's, you need to work around it a bit. Although I will say that a lot of the time USB microphones that probably aren't at the quality you need to get into a partner project. Some are, absolutely. But if you are part of a partner project like Skywind or Beyond Skyrim or any of those, it probably won't be an issue. But yeah, make sure you turn that microphone gain down before. Your position from the mouth will remain relatively similar to how you would normally, like Meowsy touched on in her lecture she did a while ago. You want it at sort of an off-axis angle. You want a pop filter there. But basically, if you make this hand and put that between your mouth and the microphone, that's how far you want to keep it, pretty much. And if you have it off-axis, that means the main path of air is not going straight into the microphone to reduce, the plosives and popping and stuff like that. but it's very important when it comes to combat because when you're loud and when you're doing things that are loud, it's going to really point out the weak spots in your setup. Because everything is just turned up to 11, right? You need to make sure that you might. You can eat chips. It's okay. You don't have to be quiet. It's alright. Sorry, where was I? Everything in your setup, all your weaknesses get really like shown a lot. Especially with acoustic treatment and reverb. Um, you need you need to make sure that you have your setup up. I don't have my acoustic setup out at the moment. It's not really a permanent thing. I just put it up when I need to record. But I personally use a moving blanket, and I have a green screen frame that I drape it over, and then I put that behind me. And then in front of me, I have acoustic panels on the wall and sort of around to try and stop it from bouncing back as much. And that's my personal setup. But yeah, you need to make sure that your setup is good because if when you're shouting, you're louder, it's bouncing around the room a lot more. There's going to be just a lot more reverb in general, and because everything's loud, it's going to be going into the microphone a lot more. So yeah, it's oftentimes when you're shouting, the weaknesses in your setup will be shown. Anyway, next bit is a little bit less technical, but probably equally, if not more, important. If you live close to other people, please talk to your neighbors before you start screaming. I've heard some stories of people getting the police called on them, or the neighbors going to check on them and stuff like that. Just make it known to the people around you that you're going to be shouting and it's nothing to worry about. You know, I couldn't imagine how confused someone might be when you just hear "you Anwar" in the next room. I don't know. It would be odd. So just make sure that you talk to your neighbors because they're gonna be probably a little bit confused if you start shouting out of nowhere. Especially, I don't want to stereotype here, but I know I personally was pretty shy and pretty introverted when I first started out, and I'm usually not loud. So going from not loud to shouting is probably gonna, raise some red flags to people. Now I just want to talk for a second to basically finish this off, but I'll ask if people have questions and stuff after as well. I want to talk about my personal progression because my first attempts at combat shouts were awful. They were absolutely awful. I remember Clock, one of the voice acting teachers. He's not as active anymore, but when I first started and I did that assignment, his reaction to my submission, he sent a GIF that had the F grade on it, and then he said, "Tell me why this is bad." And yeah, in hindsight, it was pretty bad. I want to try and find a way to show you guys what my first attempts were. I might post them in the lecture hall chat so everyone can see them at their own leisure. I've also not been checking the lecture hall chat this whole time, so I'm sorry about that if people have been asking things or things are going on. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna find some of these combat lines. But hang on, I'll do that after. I need to finish up. Anyway, yeah. So when I was a student, being able to shout was the biggest roadblock that I had. It took me quite a while to be able to get it done, and now I would say it's probably one of my strong suits when it comes to things. I have fun doing combat now. So yeah, there is a progression to it, and don't be too hard on yourself if you're not good straight away, because it's very rare that someone is good straight away. There's that saying that the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried, or however it goes. The student has even I don't know, but the point is, you need to be able to practice and do things until you get to a good point. There is a progression to it. You are gonna fail sometimes, and sometimes you're gonna do really good. But it's all just it's all just progression, and you will get there eventually. As far as the assignments that help with being able to shout in the Arcane University, in the student assignment tab, there, which is kind of under for construction at the moment, it's not quite ready yet. But back when that was in action, there is a assignment in there that I'm sure everyone here, part of the voice acting students, know that I mentioned before. The cottage cheese and onion was one. That one is very good because it gets you to shout and actually shout and be convincing, because the context of the words you're saying does not matter. You're saying random bullshit, like, that doesn't matter. Like, no one in any situation will shout cottage cheese and onions. Onions are plenty. But it gets you to be convincing without worrying about what words you're actually saying, just to ignore that and continue on. So yeah, other than that, there was a assignment back. I think it was when HNT was getting auditions for. There was an assignment that I think Clock put out where there was a script everyone had to read, and at the end there was combat lines. And I think that's actually what made him make the cottage cheese and onions assignment, because I think he was noticing that everyone was not doing very good with the combat. So it is a very common bottleneck to have, and very, yeah. So just don't be too hard on yourself. Keep going. I don't know. I'm rambling on at this point. While I find the original files of me attempting to do combat, does anyone here have any questions? Feel free to unmute and ask if you want. Yeah, I'm all ears.
Earlier, I asked in the chat, and I got a few responses, which were awesome. Thank you, guys. How I wanted to know what you would might have said in response to. Sorry.
No, you're right. You're right.
Like, how would one practice shouting and get used to the shouts without hurting their throat? I remember reading hydration and relaxation, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure how one would relax while shouting.
It is tricky, yeah. I did try and cover that before, but it's kind of it's hard to explain. Hydration is very important. If you have like just a dry throat and mouth, it can cause more damage. That is important to drink more. Yeah, relaxing is one of those things where it really is conflicting with what you're doing, because you're not relaxed when you're shouting. In any time in real life, at least, right? So you really gotta get yourself mentally in the place of the character, but then physically try and relax. Like, it's a weird dichotomy. I will say, yeah, try your best to not tense up. If you do a little bit, it's okay to get into character a bit more. You just gotta make sure that it's not causing any damage or doing anything bad to you. The moment that you feel uncomfortable or your throat starts to hurt, then stop. But really allow yourself to have a bit of trial and error to see what works well for your body as well. Yeah, I mean, not everyone handles things the same. Just make sure you're being safe about it, and you don't hurt yourself in the process. But just take it easy, try different things, see what works best for you when you're shouting to not hurt yourself. I hope
Are there any
that
techniques?
helps. Techniques?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. No, I need questions. It's good.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
You're totally fine. I'm trying to think, right? For me, I just shout. I'm just loud, right? So I don't know. It's been a while since I started out. So it's just hard for me to think. But I mean, like I did mention before, isolating yourself from the outside world, to me, like putting a blanket over my head and like around me, I was literally like this, like huddled over the mic. That helped me a lot. Just so I felt more comfortable to be loud in the first place. But yeah, as far as techniques, it's just practice, really. You just gotta be loud to be loud. It's one of those things you gotta just jump in head first and then just work it out from there. It's kind of hard because there is no way to fake it. There's no hidden technique that makes you sound more loud. You to be convincingly loud and angry, you need to be loud and sound angry. Um, which yeah, I wish there was an easier way, but it's kind of not really the case.
As far as saving your voice goes,
Mm.
with Lord of the Rings, there was this thing called Gollum juice.
Okay.
Something that the voice actor for Gollum just sipped on all day. I think it was just like hot lemon and ginger tea with honey in it.
Oh, okay.
So that's probably bound to give you some sort of boost, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It keeps the throat happy, probably.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
does.
Any seconds. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, you're totally fine. That is a good point. Drinking things just in general to stay hydrated is great. Um, and things, yeah, like warm tea with honey and ginger and everything. Like, I mean, I usually have that when I have a sore throat and I'm sick, and it helps a lot. So it must do something. Yeah, do just find what works for you, I guess, when it comes to when it comes to the little nitty gritty stuff like that can change from person to person. It is just trial and error and knowing your body. Just be safe while you're doing trial and error. Don't hurt yourself. But yeah. Um,
Zeke got a quick question.
yeah.
For someone who's I'll typically sit down and do lines.
Mm.
Because most of the lines I'm doing are not combat. Would it be more advantageous to stand up for those lines, help with diaphragm and being able to push the noise out, or would I be fine sitting still?
Okay, both are fine, but I will say that if you can, standing is better. Like you said, being able to get your diaphragm, get deeper breaths and everything. On top of that, there's just more physicality to it when you're standing up. It means that you can sort of get into it a little bit more, and be more convincing. I will say the overall standing is better. That being said, a lot of the time I am sitting when I'm recording. I sort of swap between sitting and standing depending on how I'm feeling. Uh, both do work and both are fine. You just got to know how to do it, I guess. But I will say for people that are trying to get into it to help get into the shouting a bit more, standing is the better option. And then once you're comfortable with it, if you can sit, then yeah, whatever's more comfortable for you.
I also feel like standing's like a bit more immersive.
Yes,
than
yeah,
combat as well too.
absolutely.
You won't
Well, yeah, like I
put
said,
your
being more
characters.
like having more physicality and everything to it. You get into character a lot more if you sort of picture yourself standing, I don't know, holding a hammer or something. Um,
Hi
Part of
guys,
my
with
plan tonight.
beginner here in the community, I just want to hear some tips because I am a foreigner. I am from another country and
mm,
I don't have much experience in English. I was thinking about this is my first class here,
mm.
and I just wanted to know how I sounded in English, how what kind of voices I could be able to if I sound clear most of the time. I have not a lot to practice, as I know.
Um, that's kind of a tricky question to answer. Because well, I don't know your voice very well. You know what I mean? I think you know your voice better than anyone. I will say that it's shocking how much you can change your voice to sit different, to do different roles if you know how to do it and you practice. But I think the first step, well, yeah, okay, what Zealot Elite said, absolutely never apologize for bad English. I have bad English. Did you hear that? Like, it's a tricky language. Never ever apologize for it. But I think the first step, especially in the Arcane University, is to be comfortable with your own voice. Um, and the moment that you're comfortable and performing well with your own voice, then that's when you can start doing voices and moving on to other things. Because the moment you try and put a voice or an accent on what you're doing that's not natural to you, it's really hard to focus on the performance over that. Because, like, when your mind is focused on doing a voice or an accent, then, you know, it's going to take away from how much you're actually getting into character and focusing on the performance and how you're emphasizing in your emotions and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it is really important to be comfortable with your own voice, and just to don't be too harsh on yourself, right? Because no one's great starting out, like with zero experience. No one's good, and if you try too hard to change your voice to something that's more normal to, more Western people or whatever, then it's really just going to put you behind. So just be comfortable with yourself, first and foremost.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Great lecturing. Great class. You know.
Thank you. So yeah, if anyone here is interested in getting into voice acting here but hasn't started yet, the voice acting channel is open to anyone and everyone. You just got to check the pinned messages, and right there is the voice acting 101 doc. Basically, just go through there, find the script, just record it and post it up, and then you'll get feedback on it. It's all the teachers, myself, Miyazi, and Argyle are the most active ones at the moment, but we're all I don't know, we're all happy to see new students and to help them out get better. So yeah. So does anyone else have any questions or?
Hey Zeke,
Hey.
when we go get those updated lines,
Yeah. This is a good opportunity to ask that. Yeah. I'll try and get that sorted out today. For me today, it's like 10:30 a.m. for me. I'll try and get that sorted out in the next like couple hours, hopefully, and get that to you. I don't know. I need to do a bit of formatting, but yeah, I'll try and get those to you ASAP. So I've been busy. So yeah. Okay. That's pretty much it then. Unless anyone else has questions, but yeah, thank you all for coming along. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions after this that you think of, feel free to ping me either in this chat or the voice acting chat and just ask away. Yeah. Oh, thank you everyone.
Actually, I think I have a question.
Oh, yep. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you tell me why this is bad?
No, that's a tough question. I can't answer that. That's the one question that I can't answer. Sorry, my mind just went off into places. I get off track very easily, as I'm sure you've noticed. You know what? I'm gonna skip that question.
That fits. Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
a teacher doesn't answer your question? What kind of world is this?
Yeah, I know.
No, we are allowed to do that.
I'm dropping out.
I've never received a proper education.
All right. So is that? Oh, yep.
Zeke, I did see in Audacity there is a spot as you're recording, so it's something that you have to look at while you're recording it, but it does have a gain setting that you can raise and lower as you're recording if you want.
Yeah, okay. That I will say that having a physical or analog gain is always a lot better than doing it through software. I'm not quite sure how Audacity works, but when you turn down the gain with like a physical interface or something, it's actually turning down how sensitive the microphone is. So it is actually lessening how loud the input is going into it. Where when you do it through software, the mic has already clipped if you've gone over. Like the mic, it's already got that loud input and it's just turning that down so the clipped audio is just quieter after the fact. You know what I mean? So it is always better to try and turn the gain down before you record rather than during or after.
If you like, I can search for some audios where I used a USB mic and I used the gain in Audacity.
Uh-huh.
It sounds terrible, by the way.
Yeah, that would be good
Um,
actually if you have actual experience with
yeah,
that, showing what it'd be like. That'd be good.
I will probably post it by tomorrow, not tonight.
Yeah, that's totally fine. So yeah, after after I'm finished up here, I will find a bunch of my old clips of me trying to shout, and then I'll post some examples of like some half decent shouts and pain noises and stuff. Uh, just to give you guys a rough sort of comparison and show the progression, everything like that. So yeah, all right.
Zeke.
Yeah.
If you're still looking for voice actors for Hearthstone Isles, that's now's the time to
Oh,
plug it.
you're
If you're still
so
in need of
right.
it.
You're so right. Okay, we have 3 roles left in HSI, I believe. I'm trying to find. I think it is. I'm gonna butcher these
Revna.
names. Yeah, it's Revna. I think it's Yizalotta or
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Azak Grow global global global. So yeah, those 3. It's yeah, 2 women, I think a Norden and Imperial, and an Orc male. So if anyone is interested, you don't have to have experience, you don't have to be a pre-existing student or anything. Just go ahead and send an audition in, and we can give you pointers on how to improve or anything, or you could get cast for a role. But we do need voice actors for those last 3 roles. So if you're interested, go for it.
Boy, I'm about to do that right now.
Yes, yes, it's working.
Nice.
See,
Great idea.
I've never done an orc before.
Hey, I mean, look, I'm terrible at orc, but there's no use in not trying. All right. So is that pretty much it? There's nothing else I should mention before I go?
All we got you here.
Uh-huh.
As the resident RASP expert,
Mhm.
I'm still having some trouble on getting the RASP, and I'm trying to find that sweet spot that's not the full like fast vibration, but also not slow enough that it doesn't that the false chords don't activate.
Mhm.
How do you recommend on getting through that point? Because I either go just a little too fast or just a little too slow, and I can't really work my way in.
Yeah. Okay, so when I was starting out, I always, all the time before I did any lines, is I would do that exercise of holding a note, of like holding that throat singing, just for a few seconds to try and see if you can fall into that sweet spot, and then you can sort of just go straight into that when you do your dialogue. Another part, I mean, I really can't stress this enough. Relax, like physically relax your muscles. I know you've said that that's been hard for you, because you're very tense all the time. But if just try your best to physically relax and loosen up all your muscles, because yeah, once you do that and you can sort of comfortably do things without tensing up and sort of starting to weaken over time, or just putting stress on your vocal cords when that doesn't need to be, it will make things a lot easier. But yeah, I think, I mean, what I personally do, like as far as like airflow and everything goes, is try your best to keep it to the same amount of airflow as you use when you're normally speaking, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to put into words because it's very much just like a feeling, and when you've got it, kind of thing. Uh, Argyle is a great person to ask because he can explain everything just eloquently. It's a skill, but yeah.
In my personal opinion, I like to just go, just like over and over for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I was like, think of start putting in just random things,
I had butter, just straight butter for lunch, just straight butter for lunch. If you
Better.
ain't do that, you ain't a real animal like me.
Yeah, the dark elves are known for having straight butter for lunch. It's a common delicacy. Yeah, no, that is a good idea and a good exercise to do. Just be patient with it and yeah, let yourself really get comfortable with doing it. But yeah, I don't know.
How do you get it to be consistent? Like, 'cause I know that when I've tried to do anything with rasp at
Mm.
all, just playing around, it'll start and then it'll fall off like after like half a second.
Yeah, okay. So for that, breathing, taking good deep breaths from your diaphragm is very important. Making sure that when you're breathing, your chest and shoulders aren't going up; they're staying pretty much still, but it's your stomach that's going out. Breathe with your stomach kind of thing. That for me helps a lot. It's also just practice. It's like, I don't know, this is one thing that I feel bad because there's no real advice I can give because it's very much just practice makes perfect. There's no real secret way to being able to progress faster or anything. It's just you need to keep doing it. Like for me, when I was practicing the Dunmer Rasp, I would just randomly hold notes and just talk in the voice to practice just around the house and at work. Like I would just because I work at KFC, I would just be in the back breading up chicken,
That's
just
awesome.
going like just while I'm going at it, and people thought I was a weirdo, but it got me good at it. So you just got to be consistent and sort of practice it over time to get good at it.
So another question in relation to that.
Mm.
I just tried it with my mic off. First off, thank you for the tip. That helped a lot.
Mhm.
Um, but I noticed when I did it just now that as it went on longer, my voice somehow got it felt like my throat got tighter and it started to hurt just a little bit.
Yeah, okay. So I will say doing the rasp is, especially when you're starting out and you don't quite
Hmm.
know how to get to that sweet spot, it can hurt your throat and it
Hmm.
can make it sore. I think for a lot of people that's just a natural part of it, but you do want to make sure that you are taking good breaks and staying hydrated and everything. Like I said,
Hmm.
keeping your throat healthy is very important. Um, I'm just trying to think.
Is there a way to keep it open while I'm doing it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just physically relaxing a lot is just it's very you really just gotta make sure that you've sort of yes, I don't know, the way I like to think of it is like long day of work, you sit down on the couch and you sort of just slump everything, right? You just sort of relax. That's kind of the point of relaxation that I try and aim for, just loosening everything up. And that way, if you can try and keep it like that and just stay consistent with that first part where you're doing it good and it's not hurting, um, yeah, that's probably the best way to go about it. And the more you practice, the more consistent you'll get, the more time you can do it without it hurting and stuff like that. Mm. So yeah, is that
Thank
it or
you.
that's totally fine. Sorry if I ramble a lot. I'm not very good with things on the fly, but
No, that was perfect.
um
Thank you.
of course. So yeah, all right. Well, I might finish up here because I do have other things that I need to get done. But if anyone has any other questions, feel free to ping me in any chat that would make sense to ping me in. And I'll be happy to get back to you over text and yeah, hopefully help you out more. So
Game writing chat's gonna be full of Zeke pings.
yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, thank you everyone. You've all been great, and I enjoyed the questions, and I'm glad everyone's uh, you know, wanting to get better and get into it. So yeah, I'll I'll see you guys in the voice acting channel.